In 1900, on a remote, unforgiving rock off the coast of Scotland, a lighthouse suddenly went dark. 3 experienced lighthouse keepers were stationed there. In a single night, they vanished as if they had never existed. No bodies, no goodbye letters, no signs of a struggle. Just an abandoned lighthouse, a stopped clock, and a mystery that has baffled investigators for over a century. Welcome to Mysteria Cases. Today we dive into the chilling disappearance at the Flannan Isles. To understand the terror of this mystery, you must first understand the location. The Flannan Isles are a small, isolated group of rocky islands in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. For centuries, sailors referred to them as the Seven Hunters. They are desolate, battered by ferocious Atlantic winds, and completely uninhabitable. Local legends whispered that these rocks were cursed. Even sheep herders who brought their flocks to graze during the day would refuse to spend the night on the islands. They believed the land belonged to something ancient, and humans were not welcome. But by the late 19th century, the expansion of maritime trade required safety measures. Defying nature and superstition, the Northern Lighthouse Board ordered the construction of a massive 75-foot lighthouse on Isle Moor, the largest of the islands. It was a brutal engineering challenge. The cliffs were steep, and the waves were merciless. But in December 1899, the light was finally ignited, casting a beam visible for 24 miles. The men chosen to operate this lonely outpost were not amateurs. They were hardened veterans of the sea. James Ducat, the principal keeper, was 43 years old, a family man with over 20 years of experience. Thomas Marshall was the second assistant, known for his strict adherence to the rules and resilience. Donald MacArthur was an experienced occasional keeper, covering a shift for a sick colleague. Their job was grueling but simple. Keep the lenses clean, keep the oil topped up, and ensure the light never went out. For a year, the operation ran smoothly. But then came the dark, freezing month of December 1900. On December 15th, a ship named the Arctur was sailing past the Flannan Isles on its way to Leith. The captain noticed something deeply alarming. The weather was terrible, visibility was low, but more importantly, the lighthouse was completely dark. In those treacherous waters, a dark lighthouse meant certain death for passing ships. The captain reported the anomaly as soon as he docked, but due to administrative delays and severe winter storms, a relief vessel could not be sent immediately. For 11 agonizing days, Isle Moor sat in complete darkness, battered by the screaming Atlantic winds. No one knew what was happening inside. Finally, on December 26th, the relief ship Hesperus broke through the waves and arrived at the island. Captain James Harvey ordered his men to fire a distress flare into the gray sky. They blew the ship's massive steam whistle, expecting to see the 3 keepers rushing out to the cliffside. They waited. The echoes faded, but there was only silence. A volunteer named Joseph Moore was chosen to go ashore. Moore knew the men well. He was filled with a deep sense of dread. As he climbed the steep, slippery steps carved into the cliff face, he noticed the first strange detail. The entrance gate to the compound was securely closed, but the main door to the lighthouse was unlocked. Moore pushed the heavy door open and called out the names of his friends. "James, Thomas, Donald!" His voice echoed in the stone cylinder of the tower. No one answered. He walked into the kitchen. The scene was frozen in time. The ashes in the fireplace were completely cold, meaning the fire had been out for days. On the table, meals were set out but only half eaten. A chair was knocked over on the floor, suggesting someone had stood up in a violent hurry. Moore climbed the spiral staircase, checking the sleeping quarters. The beds were unmade. The keepers had not slept there in days. He finally reached the lantern room at the very top. The massive lenses were meticulously cleaned. The oil fountains were fully topped up. The men had done their duties perfectly, right up until the moment they vanished. Moore ran back to the ship, his face pale, and reported the terrifying news to Captain Harvey. "The island is empty," he said. "The men are gone, An official investigation was launched immediately by the Northern Lighthouse Board. Robert Muirhead, the superintendent who had originally hired the men, arrived on the island to find answers. What he found only deepened the mystery. Inside the lighthouse, he found the men's foul weather gear. 2 sets of waterproof oilskins and heavy boots were missing, but Donald MacArthur's heavy winter coat was still hanging on its peg. This was a chilling detail. It was mid-December in the North Atlantic. The freezing winds were lethal. MacArthur was a seasoned sailor. He would never step outside into a winter storm without his coat. The only explanation was an emergency so catastrophic and sudden that he didn't have 5 seconds to grab his jacket. Muirhead then inspected the exterior of the island. On the western landing stage, he found a scene of absolute destruction. Heavy iron railings were bent and twisted. A massive wooden box, which was secured in a crevice 110 feet above sea level, had been smashed to pieces. A stone weighing over a ton had been completely moved. Whatever happened here involved an unimaginable physical force. But the most disturbing piece of evidence was yet to be found. It was sitting quietly on a desk. The lighthouse logbook. Lighthouse keepers were required to keep meticulous daily records of the weather and their duties. The entries found in the Flannan Isles logbook are legendary in maritime history. On December 12th, Thomas Marshall wrote, "Gale, severe winds the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years. He noted that James Ducat, the incredibly tough principal keeper, was very quiet. Even more bizarrely, Marshall wrote that Donald MacArthur was crying. MacArthur was known on the mainland as a brawler, a tough, hardened man who feared nothing. Why would a severe storm make a veteran sailor cry? On December 13th, the entry stated that the storm was still raging. The men were terrified. Marshall wrote, "All 3 of us have been praying. Professional lighthouse keepers in a fortress of solid stone, 75 feet above the sea, were praying for their lives." December 14th had no entry at all. Then came the final haunting entry on December 15th. Just a few hastily written words: "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." After that, nothing. But here is the detail that breaks reality. Investigators checked the weather reports from nearby weather stations and passing ships for those exact dates. On December 12th, 13th, and 14th, the weather around the Flannan Isles was completely calm. There were no severe storms recorded in the region until December 17th. So, what storm were the men experiencing? Were they trapped in a localized supernatural hurricane? Or were they suffering from a shared psychological breakdown? For over a century, theories have circulated about what truly happened to the 7 hunters. The official report by Robert Muirhead concluded that it was a tragic accident. He believed that 2 of the men were working on the western landing to secure a box during a sudden, unexpected giant wave. According to the theory, MacArthur saw the wave coming from the lighthouse window, knocked over his chair, and ran out coatless to warn them, only to be swept away himself. But locals in the Hebrides never accepted this. Why would experienced men turn their backs to the ocean? And what about the phantom storm in the logbook? Another theory suggests madness. Total isolation in the dark, roaring ocean can break the human mind. Some suspect that a fight broke out. Perhaps the aggressive MacArthur snapped, murdered the other 2, threw them into the sea, and then jumped himself. Others lean into the paranormal. Remember the local legends? The island was believed to be cursed. Folktales speak of the phantom of the 7 hunters, a dark spirit that claimed the men for trespassing on sacred land. In modern times, some have even suggested alien abduction, pointing to the unexplainable nature of their sudden departure and the localized weather anomalies. No bodies ever washed ashore. No clothing was ever found floating in the water. Today, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse is fully automated. It operates by itself, with no humans needed. But sailors who pass by the lonely rock still report a feeling of unease. Some say that over the roar of the Atlantic wind, you can still hear 3 men calling out for help. Was it a freak act of nature? A descent into madness? Or something far more sinister? The ocean keeps its secrets, and the mystery of the Flannan Isles remains completely unsolved. What do you think happened to James, Thomas, and Donald? Drop your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the unknown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Mysteria Cases, and ring the bell so you never miss a mystery. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.